As industries evolve with technology, many things change. For better or worse, evolution is inevitable. For a real and raw conversation on music at the intersection of tech, we speak with our very own Thavius Beck, a multi-instrumentalist, producer, emcee, and electronic music educator whose life revolves around music and technology.
When it comes to the production and distribution of music with technology, a lot has changed over the years. From how we create it to how we consume it, music has evolved with technology. My question for you, Thavius, is this. In your opinion, what's the biggest win that technology has brought, and what's the biggest loss, if any?
Well, I mean, the biggest win is that there's more access to tools and creators can reach their audience directly, So the fact that you don't need to go through some big, huge corporation or, have to go through the typical channels of the music industry to create an audience, to be able to build a fan base, to connect with promoters and book shows, artists can now do all of that on their own if they're willing to. So, and to be able to create an album from scratch as one person in your bedroom on a laptop, with really no budget. And to be honest, a lot of people who are getting into music now, discovering this technology, may not have the money, but they have access to pirated material as well, which I'm definitely not an advocate of, but I understand how that path goes. So you could have, a busted computer and really no budget and be able to make an entire album and distribute it to a fan base and connect with people and perform. That's a major, major difference from before. The biggest loss, though, is that there's no need to develop your skills to do any of that. So you could have a computer and go online and find a folder of breakbeats and loops and whatnot and just put them together like a collage artist. And people think you're a genius. And it's like you didn't even write any of that stuff, and you may not have an understanding of basic harmony or theory and things like that. And you're just throwing things together based on what you find. So there's not a lot of incentive for people to learn the foundation and theory behind how to do what the technology is doing for them, So in a lot of ways, people are just, getting more and more lazy and complacent and kind of taking for granted the fact that back in the day, you had to learn, a basic scale or two, you had to understand how notes sounded together. So if you wanted to make someone feel happy or sad, you understood what scale, what sort of key to work in, things like that, right? So not to say that that's totally gone, but there's just not as much incentive for people to learn, so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of like when you're driving, you just plug in where you need to go. You don't need to know how to use a map or remember directions. We rely on our technology to do that. So, so let's take a trip together way back in the Wayback Machine and travel back to where you began, Thavius, in music. And then, way back. And then let's come right back here. I'd love to know, back in the day, what was the first, most high-tech piece of equipment that you had, and what is that today?
It's an interesting question because I don't know that I could answer it in terms of what's the most high-tech. The first piece of gear that I ever got that I consciously tried to use to make music in some sort of interesting way, taking advantage of technology, is this keyboard called the Casio SK1. It's this old Casio keyboard. You could sample with it, but it could sample for 1.4 seconds. You could only store one sample. The sample rate was really, really low. It wasn't meant to be some professional thing, but it became pretty popular. A lot of people ended up doing stuff to circuit bend it and make it do more than it could. I got this when I was I don't know, 9 or 10 or something like that. And I remember back then we had everyone had the little hi-fi stereo system with the record player and the dual cassette thing. And the whole secret was with the dual cassette player, it had high-speed dubbing. So if I set it up for high-speed dubbing, I could play a cassette, play it twice as fast. And if I sampled that, I basically got twice the sample time because the music was playing twice as fast, So I could play with that, slow it down, do little loops, and I would record those to tape. And that was the first time I actually started trying to loop stuff to make beats, right? And it was pretty high tech back then, I guess, Now I have so much stuff, it's hard to say what's the most high tech. All of it's high tech in its own way. But I guess what would be the most interesting combination of things? I have this sampler sequencer synthesizer called the Dirty Wave Mate. I might even have it over here in my backpack. And it's really small. It's developed on this platform called Arduino. And no, did he use Arduino? I think he used a Teensy, whatever it is. It's a small microcontroller. It's very, very cheap. And this person was genius enough to build his own machine that fits in the palm of my hand. I don't know if this is going to show up on this. Is it?
Oh, it's kind of disappearing for a moment. Oh,
wait, let me put it on my face.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, so this thing here, it's a sequencer, sampler, synthesizer. It's got stereo speakers, built-in battery. I can connect it to my computer as an audio interface, unlimited sampling time. I've got an SD card in here with like, I don't know, 128 gigabytes worth of stuff, and fits in my pocket, you know? So in terms of just how far technology has come, I think this is probably a good example of it. But I don't know. Yeah. Everything is high tech nowadays. So.
Everything is high tech. But the fact that it can be so teensy tiny and do so very much is wild. So
it's pretty nuts.
Pretty nuts. So I'm really excited to say this next piece. We won't call it a comeback. It's been here for years. I just really wanted to say that. Vinyl. It's been rising in popularity. Question for you about vinyl. What is it? Is it the warmer sound, that just physical feel that you can touch it, you can hold it? Is it the nostalgia that supports this resurgence? What are your personal and professional thoughts about vinyl?
I mean, you know, it's a bigger tactile thing that you can touch. You go to the store, you can flip through album covers and the artwork is way bigger. You know, you pull the album out and you have this big physical disc with grooves that you can touch, and you put it on and you have to physically interact with it to go from song to song, and you have to flip it over to hear the other side of the record. And yeah, it is warmer in a way, just because of the way music has to be mastered for vinyl. There's a different EQ curve for that. Music on vinyl tends to sound more dynamic because it's not mastered to be so incredibly loud, just based on the physical, you know, constraints of vinyl, and the music having to fit into these grooves, and you don't want the needle to jump or whatever throughout the record. So there's a certain way that you have to just master the stuff to make sure the vinyl can play correctly, right? So all of those things lead to it sounding a bit different than what you would hear on a CD or in an MP3 or something like that. The idea of warmth is part of that. Whatever preamp that you have to use, you know, when you connect your vinyl to something else in order to play it back might affect that too. So there's a lot of things to it. It's also kind of, I don't want to say kind of gimmicky, just in a way that, like, you know, people are sort of pushing this idea of a resurgence of vinyl. I think it's cool. Vinyl is really expensive to manufacture. And it's kind of a big risk, you know, for a lot of people to invest in it unless they know they have an audience that's going to buy it, right? So I'm glad that people are supporting it. I think it's a great option to have. I'd rather have vinyl than an MP3 any day of the week, you know? So, but it's just about people being able to get the music and listen to it, you know, whatever they prefer and enjoy. It's all good as long as they're supporting, you know? So.
Well, I will say that Cosmic Noise sounds really nice on vinyl. So, you know.
Well, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. So you posted a video recently that caught not only people's eyes, but people's ears, mine specifically. You posted a video entitled Granular Metronome Part 2, stating, in your words, "Now you can see what it sounds like." In this video, there's this vibrant visual translation where the sound comes in forms of pulses, shapes, colors. As a recording artist, as a producer, Thavius, when you close your eyes, is this how you see the sounds that you make?
Not specifically like that, but music is really visual to me. And I tell my students and clients this all the time. If people play me stuff and they want feedback, usually, like, when I tell them something, it's based on like what the music looks like to me, you know, but it's more in terms of like translating a sound to a certain feeling that corresponds to like a place, right? So it's like, okay, this feels like sunset on a West Coast beach, and, you know, the night is about to like take a turn or something, or this feels like running down a dark corridor and there's this momentum, but there's a bright light and things are about to get better, or it feels like you know, dark blues mixed with, you know, there's just a lot of visual stuff that I see, and I try to translate it in a way where, like, I don't know, music isn't like literal, there's not like a one-to-one correspondence between what something sounds like and, some term that can describe it properly and completely, so um even like with vinyl, we talk about it being warm, right? Like, what does that really literally mean, right? Like, it means different things to different people, but there's kind of a ballpark sort of like, idea of what that could mean. So if I say something like, it feels, like warm embers from a fire that was blazing, and like right now, the embers are about to sort of like die out, right? It kind of gives a sense of not just like the overall tone, but sort of like where are things going throughout the course of the song, so but in terms of the visual that I posted, I mean, ultimately all it was, I had this random idea to take the metronome from my DAW and run it through this granular delay, which takes the audio, it'll delay it, but each subsequent time it gets delayed, the pitch can change and you can change the distance between the delays. And, it just makes this nice cascading sort of thing. And then from there, I was like, all right, let me see if I can run this through this visual program. It's this program called Magic Performer that I just stumbled onto. And it makes it really easy to work with audio and video. And, audio and visual, there's a direct link, because usually when you see something, there's some sound that corresponds to it, right? So the more that I can do that, I'm interested in pursuing that further going forward. So it's not like that was a conscious like piece. It was just like, all right, let me take this weird thing and run it through this program and see what happens. And I like how it turned out, so maybe I'll explore that more in the future. We'll see.
Well, I wish you would. It's really cool.
Thank you.
So as we continue with this conversation, let's get less technical and more personal. I'd like to begin to understand Leo, your most recent album. I'd love to know where it came from and what it means to you.
Yeah. Project is interesting. I guess piggybacking on what I just said, I've been in an interesting place creatively trying to figure out what I really want to do next, because I don't necessarily want to do what I've always done, right? Just in terms of musical output or sound or whatever. So Leo didn't come out of nowhere, but it was inspired by the fact that my mom had passed. She passed in April, hasn't even been a year. And she passed on her birthday. And there was something that I just needed to express. It was a hard thing to, it's hard to really even put all that into words. I'll just say that like what Leo was me needing to get whatever this energy was that I couldn't really express or like share properly, and distill it into something where I could just get it out of me, A big part of it was just honoring just, the memory of my mom and just all the things she did to support me being a creative individual. She's the one who got me the Casio SK1. She got me my first sampler. She got me every single piece of gear that I had before I left the house, and was always super supportive. So my motivation was, I'm born July 31st. I'm a Leo. And I started the project, I guess 7 days before my birthday. And after I wrote the first couple songs and kind of had an idea of what the project could be, my motivation was to finish it and release it by my birthday. And, at this point, I'm not that concerned with like trying to get with some big distributor or a label or like, let me promote this thing. And the whole spirit of the project wasn't about that anyway. It was just like, this is just a cathartic release. I just need to just do it and just get it outside of me, So yeah, that was it. I put it up on Bandcamp, all the lyrics are there. It's a pretty personal album. It just reflects where I was at the time, and processing stuff personally and in the world, because the world is in a really weird place right now. So yeah, that was it. That's what it is, and again, it's not something where it's like, I have some campaign behind it, or I'm trying to like, go check it out. It's like, it's there and it exists, and if people are curious, feel free to check it out. But yeah, it was just a necessary thing that I needed to do for myself. That was really it, so.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So we started our conversation with words. Let's end our conversation with words as well. So here's the thing. I'll say a word and you share the very first word that comes to mind. Are you
All
ready?
right. All
I
right. Are you ready?
chose, I don't know. I chose 9 words because 9 is my favorite number, so I hope you're cool with that.
Okay.
First word, music.
Life.
Construct.
Break.
Noise.
Noise.
Class.
Teach.
Love.
Sigh.
Family.
Precious.
Start.
Finish.
Expression.
Crucial.
Confession.
That one got me stuck. That's the first thing that came to my head. So there you go.
Fantastic. Well, that was so much fun. Thank you so much, Thavius, for taking time. I know you've got a lot going on, a full-time professor, and all of the things. Thank you for taking time to share your story.
Absolutely.
Thank you
No worries.
for helping all of us just become a bit more aware now. Thank you.
No, thank you for taking the time to speak with me, and hopefully someone will get something useful from all of this.
I'm sure that they will. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.